Welcome. We are just waiting 1 minute before this event starts. And there we go. I'm admitting everyone.
Okay.
In 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Creatives for Climate event, the psychology of climate in action. For this event, 700 people showed up. So as everyone is slowly coming in, let's watch something together.
Creatives for Climate is a global network on a mission to drive action and awareness of our climate and ecological emergency. We're an ecosystem of brains that has the power to change the world. We're looking for more creative and beautiful minds, willing to learn, imagine a better future, and act on the climate crisis. We're a living network of interconnected and communicating roots, working in symbiosis. And we want our numbers to mushroom. More brains always make things better. So whether you're a scientist, designer, activist, performer, developer, farmer, strategist, filmmaker, brand specialist, writer, investor, engineer, policy advisor, or simply a passionate human, we want you to join us. Because creative thinking is going to save the planet we call home.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this Creatives for Climate event. We are curious who you are and where you're calling in from. Please make sure that the chat is all yours. So introduce yourself, drop your handles, let us know what country you are currently calling in from, as we're waiting 1 more minute for the rest of our global creative network to join. 700 people signed up for this, and I see already quite some participants from all over the world. So very excited to have you here. So as people are dripping in, maybe I can start by welcoming you and tell a little bit of a story of what Creatives for Climate is. So Creatives for Climate is a non-for-profit intelligence network of thousands of storytellers, you guys, and sustainability experts committed to using their creativity for good. From creatives and communicators to scientists and sustainability strategists, we are building a powerful collective of storytellers and solutionists who are learning, sharing, and collaborating to take action. And how we drive change at Creatives for Climate is in the form of a triangle. The base is community, mobilizing people to come together. And the other side of the base is skills and learning through education and courses, because really there is no textbook for how to deal with the climate emergency. We have to share the knowledge that we have and move along the way. And mobilizing, so community and education, ultimately lead to creative climate action. And by doing this, we want to bridge the gap between, on the one hand, the climate science that is out there, the climate solutions, the activists, the solutionists, the change makers, and on the other hand, massive media, business, and the creative industries. So how we started is Creatives for Climate in 2019 was inspired by a letter by Extinction Rebellion that urges the advertisement industry to use its power for good. As the myth builders of our society, we have a responsibility to do something with this power. So Creatives for Climate actually started as a one-off event. It was just supposed to be a summit with the title Creatives for Climate. And it was initiated by Lucy von Sturmer of the Humble Brag. And she brought together 200 leaders in Amsterdam to listen to XR, to Extinction Rebellion, and why they sent that letter. And on the back of that, we caused a stir And we mobilized all these creatives that then become change agents and wanted to do something. And 22 agencies on the back of that summit was like, sign me up, I want to do something. And from there, Creators for Climate grew into a grassroots movement. And these are some of the examples of all the initiatives that we supported since then. So we've grown exponentially from 2019 to all that action to the collaboration platform that we built, which is why we're now very online and digital and being a nonprofit. We did creative challenges, and the hub, our home, is really the place where all of this comes together, where we have member events, learning resources, chat rooms in all different countries, so you can meet the creatives in your city or your country to see how you can rebel and use your creativity for good. And on the platform, we also provide courses, workshops, and we ask our members to sign a commitment to, first of all, divest, to not work with oil and gas clients, and to be collaborative and participatory and, inclusive. And we do free monthly learning events like this one. So our key belief is really that collaboration from within the industry is the leverage point for systemic change from our industry's perspective. We have to collaborate in order to move these masses. And the solutions exists. So the solutions to the climate emergency are out there, maybe small or maybe tucked away on the shelves of scientific magazines. They are there, they just need to be amplified and empowered. And we need new ways of acting, working, and being to build this new economy. Creators for Climate is a community to practice this new leadership that we need. So recently, someone in the hub, one of our community members, asked, why does imagining the end of the world feel easier than saving it? We must harness the power of communicators to paint a picture of what we're fighting for. If we cannot imagine what the regenerative future would look like, how can we start building it? So it starts with imagination, to shift a narrative from we have so much to give up on to we have so much to gain. So as individuals, we don't have all the answers. I certainly don't have it, but as a community, we do. So that is, in short, what Creators for Climate stands for, and we're really happy to have you all here. And today we're talking about a very interesting topic, the psychology of climate inaction. And it's really the question of, how does that work? How does the psychology of why people are inactive around climate, what are the metrics of that? And today's moderator, Josh, who I hope is in this call, is an amazing strategist and founder of Archetype, which is an agency that focuses on young people, marginalized communities, and radical social purpose. And I believe that Josh's laptop just crashed. So let me see if he'll come in. And meanwhile, I guess we'll just move on as we do until he joins. So I guess after Josh joins, he'll share a little bit about himself and why this topic is so important to him. But furthermore, I would love to introduce today's speakers. So we're going to hear from Harriet from ACT, and we're going to hear from Renée from Project Inside Out. So let's start with Harriet from ACT Climate Labs, who is an activist working at the intersection of advertising, climate change, and misinformation. And she's currently head of ACT Climate Labs, as well as Media Bounty. Harriet, are you with us?
Hi, Zoe, I am.
Happy to have you. We're very excited to hear about the Persuadables.
Thank you, and thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. I want to move on to the next slide. So, hello everyone. I've seen people pop up from all over the world, and I'm so excited to be with you. So I got into this because for a very long time I was a frustrated climate campaigner. And I felt that the work that we were always doing was so important, and that we just weren't getting the traction that we always needed. And then I was part of accidentally part of a campaign. And for those of you that don't know, the UK had a referendum around whether we should stay in the European Union about 7 years ago. And what would happen is I would turn up at things, and I would talk with friends about the issue, and we were all on the same side, and we would all nod our heads, and we would all say, yes, 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 we all agree with each other. And when we talked to each other, we just thought that there was only one way that this referendum could go. And then the referendum happened, and it went in completely the opposite way to the way that all of my friends had thought it would happen. And I was shocked, because I had not met a single person, not quite a single person, but I had not met many people that disagreed with me or thought differently. And I felt like it was such an eye-opening moment, a moment of realizing that actually, not only was I only talking to people that thought like me, that were educated like me, often that looked like me, and also that when we were talking about this stuff, we were talking about it in an information environment that effectively were a bubble. And so what was happening was we were creating this beautiful bubble of people that all agreed with each other. And that is the sentiment and the realization that I tried to bring into the work that we've done ever since. So I'd like to talk to you today. We are at Climate Labs. We are a group of advertising and climate experts. And we want to prove, I guess, that advertising can supercharge climate communications. And we do that in 3 ways. So first off is our intelligence unit, where we're looking at listening. Because one of the things that we realized was that as a climate movement, we're not listening to people, but other people are, and they're taking advantage. We have ACT advertising, which is looking at ways in which advertising can supercharge the effectiveness of climate communications. And we're looking at sharing those learnings. So part of the reason I'm here today is because I want everyone, to be able to take away stuff that they can use in their day-to-day projects. And we've built our project around something we call the Persuadables. And this is the 69% of people in the UK who are neither climate activists nor anti. And that's because as climate activists, we spent a lot of time talking to each other and talking to people that absolutely disagree with us. And if you can imagine, it's a little bit, for everyone else, it's a little bit like being sat around a dinner table and 2 people arguing. And you're not taking anyone with you, you're not persuading anyone. Everyone else is sat there kind of staring at their plates and hoping that we'll finish. And so our Persuadables are very diverse, lots of different people. But importantly, they're probably not young, white, better off, and left-leaning, because most climate communications are aimed at these groups. So what we find is that the way we're currently communicating around climate is creating an imbalance in who supports climate action and who doesn't, because our messaging is landing with the same people. If we look at the data, we see that way more women than men are concerned about climate change. If we look at older groups versus younger groups, we see that older groups are less concerned about climate change than those who are younger. If we look at people who are better off, we see a huge 20% gap in people who are concerned about climate change and people who aren't. And if we look at the ideological left to right, we see that left-leaning people are much more likely to be concerned and think about that personal harm from climate change is an issue for them. So this is creating an imbalance. And this is creating what we call kind of at-risk audiences. So if we are not listening to people, if we are not thinking about our communications in terms that resonate with them, that they understand, that speak to things that they care about, then we are essentially ignoring them and leaving them out. And so climate communications, if you are young, middle class, white, left-leaning, and already a climate activist, there is a lot here there for you. Things are framed in ways which you understand, that you see people like you in these communications at protests, for example. But if you're not in these groups, it can feel alienating, and we are absolutely leaving people behind. Now, the reason we call these groups persuadables is because the climate movement are not the only people who are talking to them. And this creates a danger for us, because the people who are talking to them are creators of mis and disinformation. Next slide, please. So if we think about climate mis and disinformation, it is everywhere. We've probably accidentally shared some ourselves. We've got oil companies who are investing millions of pounds into kind of false information, into advertising. We've got influencers who will tell people that actually things like net zero are going to leave your gran cold and poor. You've got people who are jumping on the back of 15-minute cities and saying, hey, this is a form of climate lockdown, and you won't be able to see your mum. You've got people who are really actually kind of leaning into these emotional things and these emotional triggers, and who are listening to our persuadables, and so we believe that actually climate mis and disinformation has become our main competitor in this space. And what we see is this is shaping how most people think about climate change, and it is leaving them stuck. So when they're hearing this stuff, what they're hearing is actually, maybe this can wait. Maybe this action can wait. Maybe someone else should be doing it. Why should it be me? They might be thinking, well, I tell you what, I recycle, we've got rid of plastic straws, we've done our bit. So why are you asking for more? Or there's this creation of culture wars where actually people feel like climate action isn't for people like them, or that they are being told what to do. And these culture wars pit groups against each other, and is very effective in slowing down climate action. And part of what is driving this is because we don't live in a kind of traditional media environment and world anymore. We don't pick up the same newspapers as each other. We don't see the same media as anyone on this call. We will all have different profiles. And when I pick up my phone, because I am what we call a progressive activist, I'm a kind of, I'm into climate. I have been for a long time. I've curated my Twitter feed to get interesting experts on the subject. My friends probably share lots of kind of positive or interesting stories around climate change, on their Facebook feeds. I read stuff that's related to this. And so what my media environment looks like is very different to someone who doesn't. So for me, let's keep going on this one. We might as well do all the animations. So there we go. So for our persuadables, actually what they're seeing is a lot of misinformation, a lot of climate skepticism, because people like them are confused, or might be sharing misinformation because it's often salacious or it's often reactionary, and it's stuff that kind of will get us talking. Whereas I will be seeing lots of factual and pro-climate content, because I've just set up my media experience that way. And that means that we're getting very different types of information. And this is important, and actually this is by design. This hasn't just happened. We know that big oil outspent kind of clean energy and environment movements by 27% over the last 10 years in terms of the way that they're communicating this stuff. And that means advertising and lobbying. So in fact, when we're working with kind of our nice groups, actually people who are these malicious groups are actively targeting people and actively spreading mis and disinformation. So what we do is we look at ways to get people unstuck, and we look at ways of actually changing people's media environment, because we believe thank you, 27 times, not 27%, that's true. Sorry, can we go back one? So what we do is advertising kind of actually can help us to start to reach people, because people need, and I know Renée is going to talk an awful lot about this, people need to hear positivity. They need to feel seen and heard. And part of that comes from, kind of making sure that they are hearing from us. So we work with advertising. We do it in a particular way. We do it because we do it in ways which build trust, which help people become aware of issues and help them, feel informed. And in those ways, we think that we can unstick people and we can help, kind of actually inoculate them against misinformation. So advertising is not going to, we're not going to decrease the amount of misinformation that's out there. But what we can do is kind of actually reach people first. And if we reach people first, and if we reach people in a way that speaks to them, that they see themselves in our content, in our messaging, if it speaks to things that they are concerned about, then we're going to reach them, and we're going to kind of inoculate them essentially. So if we can see that the light green squares here are supposed to circles here are supposed to kind of exemplify advertising, and if we can do that, and if we can get into their media environments, we can help change the narrative. So we've been testing this idea for about the last year, and we've got loads of learnings, but I will summarize these for you. Essentially, if we are thinking of doing this, first off, we have to listen to people, and we have to make sure that our content features people from our persuadable groups, and we've called these people trusted messengers, and actually kind of speaks to the issues that they care about, and these might be local or they might be emotional. We've got to kind of get out of the digital space, because people see a lot of mis and disinformation in the digital space and they don't trust it. So what we've been doing is experimenting with things like out of home and broadcast as well, to make sure that people hear trusted messages. And we've also been ensuring that everything that we put out there builds on research from our persuadable audiences, and then builds on the concerns that we've heard from them when we've talked to them. So thank you very much. That's me.
Thank you so much, Harriet. That is very, very interesting. Yay! I see some people applauding. Wow. So in the chat, it's been going pretty wild, and I think we have space for one question. Let me see. Is there someone that at this moment in time, as I stop sharing for 1 second and we see everyone's faces, wants to raise their hand just to ask their one question to Harriet after her sharing this research? There is a question here from, I see Sabine. Hi, Sabine. Do you want to put your question in the chat?
Thank you so much. Please, don't jump in. But
yeah, you want to share your question, Sabine?
oh yes, my question, and Harriet, thank you so much. So I work with a startup that's looking at reinventing waste into construction materials and repurposing materials, and so quite a big game changer in an industry that causes a lot of damage and carbon output. My question is, when you're working across very different sectors like construction and architecture and design, and trying to influence investors who may work in very, very different fields, and you've been in that situation, what has been the least effective thing that you think we could do? Just like what's the no?
So I think that we traditionally have leaned into something, things like earned and owned media. And what we have to understand, I think, is that when we are thinking about media environments, they're often commercial spaces. So if we are doing things digitally, for example, and we are just relying on, kind of our circles and the circles of, of groups associated with us, we're not going to actually cut through to these persuadable groups. Just because actually, kind of targeted advertising can take us to new places. So that's number one. And then I think number two, in terms of making sure that, things not to do, is also just to think about digital spaces when we're thinking about communicating with people, because those digital spaces are not that trusted. And actually, we are used to hearing messages from a wide range of sources. And so when we do hear those, we hear messages in different ways from different kind of sources. It makes it much more likely that we're going to retain those messages, and they're going to trust us, and that those messages are going to be retained. And apologies, Sabine, did that answer your question? Because you cut out a little bit from my internet. Great.
Thank you so much, Harriet. Is Josh already with us? I thought I saw him glimpse in there for a while. If you are, please unmute and join us.
I'm finally here. Sorry for the, literally, you cannot make this up. As I'm about to join the call, 15 minutes early, my laptop crashes. Here we are. Technological innovation doesn't do anything, but I'm glad to be a part of the call. Definitely glad to be here. So super sorry for that. But I did catch a bit of it on my phone before I joined on my laptop. And I'm definitely sort of happy that we've been able to have this first half with Harriet so far. So brilliant in terms of just like getting us thinking about the yeah, I guess we have all been there, about the psychology of why people sort of need to act. And I guess we've gone past the question portion for now, but without further ado, I will introduce our second speaker, and then at the end of that, come back in and sort of give my beginning portion as we continue into some more reflection and some more questions. But without further ado, Renée Lertzman is a PhD and the founder of Project Inside Out, and she is here to deliver some amazing insights on not only pulling from her sort of wealth and breadth in academia in research, but also on how she's managed to bring that research into actionable tools that she's delivering through her project Inside Out, to really delve into the psychology of why we act, why we behave, what motivates us, what drives us, and how to inspire that leadership for positive transformative change. So I will hand over to Renée.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Wow, that was incredible, Harriet. So much to absorb and process there. It was very rich. I am so excited to be here. First off, just want to shout out to Creatives for Climate and Lucy and the team for basically showing up exactly for what's needed right now, which is being guides, convening people, creating community is where really the traction is, which I'm going to be sharing a bit more with you in the next several minutes. But want to really acknowledge and thank you for holding this space so thoughtfully and gracefully. I notice whenever I join an event, live or virtually, it's kind of an interesting thing. You can kind of tell the vibe, the energy of the field that gets created when people are together. And I've just become very honed to how does it feel in this interaction? And sometimes it doesn't feel great, and sometimes it feels amazing, and I'm feeling really good. It's early morning for me. I'm in California. I live south of San Francisco in a community called Woodside. And I'm really, really excited to be with you. So I'm actually going to set my timer because I tend to talk a lot. And so I want to make sure I'm on track and honoring our timing in this event. So I want to start with, if we can go back, actually, I want to start with just level setting with this work more broadly and how I'm coming into this. So I'm not going to go into my background and journey here, other than to say that over time, I've been looking at the intersection of comms, communication, climate, sustainability, and psychology for 30 years. And it really did start when I was a young person and I was a psychology student, and I took some environmental studies classes, and I was thrown into a deep existential crisis. And at the time, there really was not a lot of conversation about that. And so I decided at that point to make it my focus, and it literally has been my focus. So I went on to do a master's in communications, did a lot of media, was a media and comm strategist for many organizations. But eventually, I decided that I wanted to really listen to people and take the work into the next level. And so it really beautifully builds on what we've just been hearing from Harriet and her team around the flipping of pushing and telling to actually attuning and listening. But why I'm asking for this slide to be up is because I want to clarify that all of what we're doing in the climate space is a form of existential change management. And what I mean by that is that we can't lose sight of the fact that what we're talking about is existential and it's about change. And therefore it is profoundly psychological. It's psychosocial. And if we leave that out in any way in our work, we are undermining what we're doing, and we're not really bringing the full kind of, repertoire that we need. So we're in a moment right now that this event signals, which is that it's time to go beyond only the kind of technological, policy, economic, scientific, educational lens. We're in a really dynamic moment right now where we're thinking together about how do we move and catalyze change and transformation. So the lens that I'm bringing in with y'all is deeply psychological, and it's through the lens of trauma studies, of neuroscience, of affect, of feeling, of how humans process really hard, complicated stuff. So I like to start with always invoking Amy Edmondson now. So some of you might be familiar with the Inner Development Goals. The Inner Development Goals is a new initiative that's come out of Sweden. It's a global movement. I'm not going to talk about it right now, other than to say that through the work as an advisor, I've been working with Amy Edmondson. And what I want to invoke here with this awesome group of people is that it's hard to learn if you already know. And I love that Amy says this, and I share it with every single community I work with at the most elite levels, all the way to, wherever. I always invoke this because we have to be in a mindset of humility. We need to be able to truly take in new information and have our theories of change be challenged. And, that's what I do for a living. And it's really hard. It's really hard. And that's why we need communities like this to support and enable that. I'm going to run through now. So we're in the business of existential change management, and where the sweet spot is in this intersection of, I put ESG, but, we could say climate, we could say environment, we could, regeneration, but really we're at this moment now where, again, I'm wanting to reposition our work as more than comms. It has to be more than comms. We are not going to get where we need to go by the most unbelievably profound messaging strategy. I don't care who produces it. It could be Google. It could be Amazon. It could be Netflix. It could be the most incredible messaging campaign. That's not how people change. That's a huge lever. But where the rubber meets the road is in human interaction, and it's in relationship. Relationships are the currency of change. So again, the reframe is that we're moving from managing change to how do we lead on change. And so what I want to introduce you to, this is going to be very brief. I see I have 5 minutes left, is Project Inside Out. So what I have done is I was invited by the KR Foundation a few years ago to dream kind of, what's your fantasy project, Renee? What would you love to do? I'm a consultant. I run my own agency. I do a lot of advising and work with business and all kinds of orgs. And I thought, what I would love is to pull together my favorite climate psychologists and comm strategists and design and create some tools and resources that help us reposition what work on climate change looks like through the lens of psychology and trauma and all of that. So we have this resource. It's currently online at projectinsideout.net, and it's a V1. So it's kind of amazing to think it was all created pretty quickly. And we're now moving into this next phase of sort of oxygenating and inviting, you all in and communities in to kind of bring it to life. But I'm going to run through very briefly kind of the headlines here. So we're going to start with, how do I show up? And Harriet touched on this, and I love this kind of story of like, how was it when I started? And I'm hoping that you all can resonate to some of this. There's a tool on the website where you can do a little bit of an assessment. So many of us identify and tend to be cheerleaders, where we feel like we have to keep things very positive and very upbeat. These are theories of change. Like a theory of change might be, well, people need to be inspired. People need to feel positivity. People need to feel like they can make a difference. And that can lead to being a bit of a cheerleader vibe. And then some of us are writers. This is the right thing to do, moral outrage, imperative, ethics, activism. Some of us relate to being educators. So if people knew more information and had the information, that will move the needle. And then we've got the guide. And the guide is really where we want to be. And the guide brings together cheerleading, writing, educating in a way that is deeply grounded in listening and being attuned. And so when I hear Harriet talk about listening as the center of the work, how we think about it at Project Inside Out is about attunement. It's about how attuned can you be to your stakeholders, like the people in construction, working on supply chain, young people, communities in, parts of the world, various regions. How can we be attuned? I'm going to run through this pretty quickly. So one of the things we do is we highlight where are the theories of change that inform our work. And so again, we could spend a lot more time on this, but I want to just go through this, that we tend to focus on behavior change, messaging, and experience. You can keep going. So stop. Thanks. So we've got the dominant paradigm tends to be either behavior change, which I'm a critic of that framing, just to be super explicit. It's not about changing behavior. Let's leave that to the side. It's not about motivating people either. It's about engagement, right? And so we tend to think about behavior change, messaging, framing, system change, design thinking, accelerators, incubators, using innovation, and experience. And the experiential realm is about connection, collaboration, community, eco-grief, anxiety, all that stuff. And what we're really needing to do is bring these things together. And that's where the real innovation comes to life. Now, this is maybe one of the most powerful frames, is the 3 A's. So when it comes to attuning, and what you could potentially leave here with is this framing of what are the anxieties that people are wrestling with. And we can imagine what the anxiety is, but it's really ideal if we practice listening to the anxiety that comes up around climate change and the implications of how we have to change our lives. Ambivalence is absolutely, okay, I'm going to wrap up with a very short video in a second. Ambivalence is where people feel pulled in different directions. Now, this is one of the gold, this is gold. And comes out of the public health sector. It comes out of something called motivational interviewing, where in the process of change, we all experience often pulled in conflict. And so your ability as creatives, as communicators, is to be able to acknowledge and name and tune in to the anxiety and the ambivalence. And what that looks like, I'm going to show you in a minute. Aspiration is, what do we all really want? What are we aspiring for? And a lot of people in the space want to literally go right here. We want to just jump there. I've worked on so many ad campaigns with so many agencies, including Transport for London, where they were like, how do we get people to want to cycle more? Because the mayor was like, we all have to get on bikes. And everyone was scrambling at TfL, like, how do we do this? And they were like, their ad campaigns, God bless them, but it was like, let's take a bike and put flowers all over it. It's like, are you effing kidding me? People are anxious about getting killed on a bike. They don't want to get wet in the rain, and they also kind of want to get on a bike. So there's ambivalence. And so the opportunity we have as creatives is to be really funny and maybe witty and interesting and edgy, because humor is a really important part of this, is like, hey, let's just call it out. Like, let's show someone wet in the rain on a bike, but they're super psyched. It's sort of like, how do we name and acknowledge that some of this stuff is hard, but people will really gain trust and traction with you if we name and acknowledge what's hard. So I have a 2-minute video, and I have to set it up in like 10 seconds. This is a message test that was created for Republican climate skeptics using the Six America framework of climate hard skeptics and soft skeptics. I created a script with a collaborator, a Republican advisor to the GOP, who wanted to create a climate positive message for Republicans. We interviewed 30 Republicans around the United States in the Midwest, mainly working class, and we experimented with affirming and acknowledging those 3 A's. So we're going to watch this. It's 2 minutes, and I want you to watch the dial, the on the screen. You're going to see where there's resonance, and I want you to see if you can notice where we acknowledge the anxiety, ambivalence, and aspiration that was heard in the interviews.
When you ask Americans what they like best about where they live, they often respond by describing their natural environment. If people live in a climate where the seasons change, they often remark on how much they enjoyed the transition from summer to autumn, autumn to winter, spring, and spring to summer. They also comment on the beauty of big skies and wide open spaces, of local forests, lakes, beaches, and mountains, and the ability to get away from the distractions of modern life and spend time outdoors. Yet they are aware that even though mankind has been given the awesome task of acting as the steward of creation, there are times we don't meet that responsibility the way we should. Let's talk for a moment about changes to our climate. When you hear discussions about our climate, a number of things may come to mind for you. You may be resentful or angry at how those who are most vocal about it are still not offering very viable solutions. You may feel really angry when you see people like Al Gore flying around the globe, not doing himself what he says others should be doing. Or the fact that the solutions being offered usually seem to involve more government. What if you were to learn that it's possible to address this issue on our own terms? That we can decide what makes most sense for us and have an honest and open discussion. That we can talk about what this means for us, our children, and those we care most about. That we can express how we really feel and how overwhelming the issue may seem. We can choose how we wish to respond to carbon pollution and raise the quality of health for those in our country through sustainable energy solutions. We can choose to respond as we Americans are known for doing, with innovation, hard work, creativity, and determination. We can rise to the challenges without compromising the welfare of those who are most vulnerable.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm not going to unpack the guiding principles right now. What I want to just say about that, if we could just pause on the slides for a second. What I want to say about that video is she ends on a note. We can do this without compromising the welfare of those who are most vulnerable. Every single word in that script is very intentional, and it was pulled directly from the transcripts of the interviews. Now, for me to do that as a very liberal, left, radical, basically, I had to get out of my own mindset. and just get out, right? And really tune into what are we hearing is an incredible sense of vulnerability and feeling aggrieved and feeling angry, but yet also wanting to be part of a positive, future. And so what I want to leave you with is that everything I'm talking about with regards to attunement and the 3 A's, you can practice. But it takes commitment, imagination, and it's an edge to have to do that, because we have our own feelings, we have our own reactivity. And so Project Inside Out is designed to really guide people, practitioners and leaders, to develop these skills. And we're launching a pilot learning journey this summer. We would love for you to sign up. We can share some information in the chat about that. And Creatives for Climate is an awesome partner in this work. And so, yeah, I think I would just end with, I think this work is truly about taking our work into more relational listening, connection, and it's an inner outer kind of process. So I'm confident we can do it, and we need to do it together in community.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Renee. Wow, that is quite something. Josh, you want to take it from here?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Renee. And thank you again, Harriet, for really sharing with us not only your insights and your strategies in terms of how we can all come away from this sort of inactive period where we definitely need to do a lot more, but a lot of us don't know how, with some solutions and some actionable tips and tricks. But also thank you for getting us to really start to challenge those very almost established notions that we sort of play around with in the creative and advertising industries. Much to your point, Renee, around sort of the Transport for London anecdote around, right, how do we get people straight to that 3rd A, straight to, ambition? That's what our industry sort of thrives off and relies off, the ambition of, oh, we need people to strive to this and to look forward to this and to want to do this next thing. But those first 2 A's are so very important. And I think there is some sort of real synergy around the persuadables disambiguation that you gave, Harriet, and also those 3 A's. It's almost as though the persuadables embody maybe those first 2, anxiety and ambivalence, maybe a lot more than some of the other groups that have been targeted with a bunch of climate comms and sort of the groups that it's worked for and the groups that it hasn't. And I think one question along those lines that I had, which I guess is for both of you before I sort of go into an audience question, is how do we reconcile that? How do we reconcile sort of the identity issue of, oh, okay, there's all of these groups that both are directly and almost more fervently affected by the climate crisis and the fallout, namely those in the global majority, but also those marginalized in the West. And how do we reconcile their identities with those attitudes to bring forth some meaningful change and some meaningful action before the change? Because even there, I'm jumping ahead in my question almost. I guess, Renee, I'll start with you, and then I'll go to Harriet, and then I'll sort of ask a couple of audience questions.
Well, I'm extremely grateful that you invoked identity, because I feel like that's been sort of a missing piece of the climate conversation for quite some time, and now we can't kind of unparse that we relate and engage with the world through our identification with community, tribe, belonging, with what we do. And so in response to your question, I think the primary thing is being sensitive to acknowledging, again, it goes back to me to attunement. So if you think about that Republican message, there was no desire to try to get people, off of their identification, say, as a conservative and as a Republican, but it was more about inviting people in. It's like an invitation. Would you be open to this? Can you imagine a scenario like that? What does this look like for you? That's just my quick thought. What do you think, Harriet?
I mean, I'm going to build on your point about identity because I think it is really important. There is a concerted effort, certainly in the UK, and you know, I do my work there, so you know, kind of that's how it's informed. There is a concerted effort to using culture wars kind of framings to actually to pit people against each other and to portray anyone that's concerned about climate as part of a blob, or you know, part of the eco mob that's you know, against hardworking, rational people. And you know, the climate movement has been tone deaf, and frankly, around some of this stuff. And I think you know that's being leveraged. So when we're thinking about, you know, when we are thinking about, you know, kind of how we approach these things and how we frame them, this is where, you know, that point about, you know, just taking a moment and thinking about our audience first, and not forgetting everything that we know about the way that we create, you know, great creative campaigns and messaging, because there is this tendency sometimes, I think, as Renée said, to jump into that education space and jump into that, you know, we know best, and we you know, kind of like we are telling you what to do. And actually, you know, these persuadables, whoever they are, you know, kind of whatever their identity is, whatever is important to them is the place that you should be starting. If you can craft narratives that start, and if we can just stop and, you know, kind of listen for a second before we speak, we'll get to a much stronger place.
I'm definitely like grateful for both of your responses on that. And I think it is a lot of, I guess, taking things at a slower pace than we're used to in our industry. And then we're used to in life, I guess, in general, for sort of everyday people, and being able to really place that time to be sensitive and to get that attunement, and to also get to understand what is it in these communities that's getting them to tick, and that's getting them to respond to the vast array of problems that they actively respond to in their own lives. But on that sort of point about things being so fast paced for sort of how we need to move, and also for the looming deadlines that are sort of thrown at us in sort of headlines in media. A question from Sabine here from before, and it reads, is the content media environment just too busy for anything meaningful to stick? And I totally feel that, I totally relate to that. It feels almost as though, to continue to say, whilst I see that as the challenge itself is for us, is there any case for simply advocating for less and better as a group with influence on messaging, shaping and distribution? Some of my clients just want to make more noise, more telling, and I find this really challenging. So Harry, I guess if you have anything to say on that, and then I'll go to you, Renée.
Sure. I mean, I'll start with a slide that I misquoted, and say, you know, the oil and gas industry are spending 27 times the amount of money we're spending on reaching people with messaging that's going to confuse them or give them false hope, or, you know, kind of ultimately pit them against each other in a bid to slow things down. So I think we need to do what we're doing, but we need to do it better, and we need to do it faster, and we need to make sure that we're reaching people. And I think, to Renée's point about behavior change, you know, I think none of our campaigns that we've run, none of them have been about behavior change. They've all been about perception change and helping people to lean a little bit into, you know, the things that are important to them and how that connects to climate action. So I think, you know, we ran one which was about kind of, you know, kind of looking at a kind of a future for the West Midlands that was based around, you know, kind of new industry and leveraging pride and local heritage, for example. We looked at others that were around, you know, opportunities through jobs and skills from the jobs that, you know, from the skills that people already had, things like that. So if we can do that, and if we can stop making that, you know, necessarily thinking, well, if I can prove that 100 people went out and cycled, to, you know, the day after the campaign, and think about how we measure success, you know, again, I think we'll come to a better place, because these things can stick and these things can help, but we're fighting with, you know, we're up against frames and messaging that has been built up over a long, long time.
Absolutely, indeed. And Renée, if I could sort of have an add-on as well to that question, and also a little bit further, just as we wrap up the Q&A. I saw in the chat sort of there's conversations around your point that human relationships are the currency of change over sort of any sort of strategic thinking or anything that we can sort of bring in. And human relationships, of course, we know do take a lot more time to form than a marketing campaign or a marketing strategy. It does take time, effort, real sort of love and care to build and nurture, and then that goes into our action. So sort of, how do we get that into meaningful communications and into meaningful sort of action, still at the lightning speeds that we're almost going at, and the lightning speeds that culture sort of moves at, and comms moves at now?
I think it has a lot to do with taking a relationship-centered and informed approach to everything we do. And what that looks like can be a variety of ways, but we can train and equip people to have more skillful and effective interactions with those in their lives about these issues is probably the single most powerful intervention. We change through our social interactions. We are social beings. We are influenced by our social world. And what's happening is a lot of people want to move into this space, and they're coming up against resistance and people not wanting to talk about it. And so the most powerful thing we could do is literally provide some simple tools and resources, in my view. And as marketing folks and campaigners and comms people, to really encourage the act of having conversations, but not just go out and have a conversation, but positioning yourself as a guide and to say, hey, we want to partner with you. We're all in this together. We're practicing, we're figuring it out. But I also think that it's a myth to think that it takes more time. So again, I work with multinationals all the time, and they're designed for big push campaigns because you're a huge multinational. You're going to do a big push, right? A big website campaign. And so that's the most expedient, efficient way to go. But imagine pairing that with small group interactions that scale across an entire organization, where you train people within the organization to lead and facilitate those. That's what I'm doing in some companies and business. So that's I think we can think innovatively about this, because people change very fast. People can change really fast. If we're in a context where we can actually be heard and seen and connected, it's like lightning. And so to your point, Josh, it takes time and nurturing to build trust and to kind of do this, and it can happen really fast, both at the same time.
So talking about taking the time to nurture and to connect, let's take this conversation to the hub, because there's so much still to say about it. And I can imagine there's a lot more questions from the community. So thank you so much, Renée, Harriet, for sharing your incredible work, and Josh for making it just in time to moderate this amazing session and balance it with your perspective. So I would love to invite everyone that is here today to join the Creators for Climate Hub. We're very proud of it, and it's a tool to share new ideas and drive creative climate action. So it's open, accessible for everyone. Everyone can join. It's free. But if you are an individual that is able to, for 99 euros a year, you get access and you unlock the premium, which allows you to find the job section and do offers and share your portfolio. So there's a lot of ways that you can interact and enjoy the premium version of being a Creators for Climate member. And we now are giving away a gift. So as part of the new members, you get a kind of masterclass of the Greenwash Watch course, which is our landmark course on sustainability marketing, with a focus on how not to greenwash, but how to deliver projects with impact. So you are welcome to join. And we are really rapidly expanding now. Our Global City Leads pilot has started. So whatever city you're in, if you would like to start a Creators for Climate meetup in your local pub, you're welcome to. This is a decentralized movement. It's yours. All you have to do is join and sign up. So yeah, you can just bring your phone out, scan this QR, and then it will take you straight there. And the way really to support Creators for Climate in its effort to be able to facilitate these kind of conversations and these spaces is to join. So supporting us is joining us. And I thank you so much for everyone that was here with us today. Yay! Any last words from Josh as we're wrapping up in the final minute of the psychology of climate in action?
Absolutely. I just wanted to say a huge thank you again to Harriet, Renee, and you, Zoe, and Creators for Climate for facilitating the space for us to really talk about this in depth. And absolutely, let's move the conversation onto the Community Hub. 2.0 is out for Creators for Climate, so everybody gets stuck into the new features and the new groups and the new Greenwashing Watch action. And I really love how both Harriet and Renee left us on some positive action points there as well. I love those points around sort of providing opportunities for persuadables to be able to actively engage with the conversations and action that a lot of them are already doing, but just in ways that we're not maybe familiar with. And Renee, again, about like really reshaping our minds into understanding that, yes, people can change and people can change quickly. It's just about facilitating that change. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do, I guess. Got a few years left of this climate crisis before we turn it into climate solution, y'all.
Yes, we're doing this. Thank you, everyone, and see you on the hub. Bye.